Do you ever feel as though you have wasted years or even decades on the wrong path in your entrepreneurial journey? In this episode, I'm going to share one of the most common reasons for this. In uncertainty about what you truly desire to create in this world. We're going to explore two radical, transformational quotes that have profoundly impacted my own understanding of the entrepreneurial journey. Let's dive in.
Are you ready to take your message, your business, and your life to the next level?
Want to learn from someone with more than a decade of experience, training tens of thousands of people from all around the world?
Hi, Cliff. This is Pauline from Auckland, New Zealand.
John from Calgary, Alberta.
Amy Porterfield.
Michael Hyatt.
Dan here from Dunedin, New Zealand.
Ray Edwards. Mark Mason. Mike Stelzner.
Pat from Smart Passive Income.
It's Darren from Melbourne, Australia.
Now is the time to live the life of your dreams and do the work you feel most called to do in the world.
Welcome to the Cliff Ravenscraft Show.
Here's your host, Cliff Ravenscraft.
Welcome back, my friend. I am so delighted that you have tuned in to this particular episode. As I shared in the open, I'm going to share with you two different radical and transformational quotes. One is from Alan Watts, titled, "What Do You Desire?" And the other one is from an author called Carlos Castaneda, quoting somebody he calls Don Juan. And that one is, "Does the path that you're on have a heart?" Now, I have shared both of these quotes in full and shared my commentary at the time I was first introduced to them many years ago in the archives of this particular podcast. The Alan Watts one was probably maybe 8 years ago. And the Don Juan quote, "Does the path you're on have a heart?" was back in 2022. I am recording this episode on Monday, November 18th, 2024. And since I have been introduced to both of these philosophies, if you will, these ways of perceiving the world and the journey that we take in life, I've had hundreds of additional conversations with those on the entrepreneurial journey. And over the past year, I've been working through one-on-one coaching and through group coaching programs and in mastermind group environments with many people who would absolutely resonate with the very first question that I opened this episode with. Have you ever felt as though you've wasted years or even decades on the wrong path in your entrepreneurial journey? Well, the first thing that I want to share with you is that you may find it a little bit heart-lifting to know that there is no such thing as the wrong path. There's only the path that you have chosen. However, when it comes to the path that you're on, there is some clarity that can be gained, I think, from these two philosophies. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to read to you the Alan Watts quote. Now, this was in a lecture that Alan Watts gave probably back in the 1960s. I happen to be one of those individuals who have fallen in love with the philosophy and teachings of Alan Watts. I went over several years ago and went to, I think it's alanwatts.com. The very first thing that you're going to see there is the works of Alan Watts. And I was eager to deposit $360 to have access to the entire library of all of his lectures. And over the years, I have since listened to probably about 70 or 80% of those lectures. And I'm still working my way through them. Whenever I am in between other books and other things that I study, I am continuing to make my way through all of those lectures. There's hundreds of hours. This is from one of those lectures. And I was first introduced to this quote from one of those motivational YouTube channels that takes audio lectures from other people and puts motivational music behind it. And I shared this quote. And when I had shared it in the past, I had no idea who Alan Watts was. And when I had shared it back then, I played the audio from that YouTube channel with the music behind it in Alan's own voice. And the amount of feedback I got from that episode was off the charts. Now, in this episode, I'm not going to embed the audio from somebody else's YouTube channel here because there's a lot of things that are going on in the world of podcasting today with Spotify. Spotify will listen to your entire episode, and if there's an audio track in the background, it gets flagged and that episode gets deleted out of your feed. And so I don't want to keep you from actually hearing this quote. So I'm going to read it to you. Here is what Alan Watts said in that lecture. He said, "What do you desire? What makes you itch? What sort of situation would you like? Let's suppose," and he says, "I do this often in vocational guidance of students. They come to me and say, we're getting out of college and we haven't the faintest idea of what we want to do. I always ask the question, what would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life? It's so amazing. As the result of our kind of educational system, crowds of students say, well, we'd like to be painters. We'd like to be poets. We'd like to be writers. But as everybody knows, you can't earn any money that way. Another person says, I'd like to live an out-of-doors life and ride horses. I said, do you want to teach in a riding school? Let's go through with it. What do you want to do? When we finally got down to something which the individual says he really wants to do, I will say to him, you do that and forget the money. Because if you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing the things you don't like to do in order to go on living. That is, to go on doing the things you don't like doing, which is stupid. It is better to have a short life that is full of what you would like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way. And after all, if you really like what you're doing, it doesn't matter what it is, you can eventually become a master of it. It's the only way to become a master of anything, to really be with it. Then you'll be able to get a good fee for whatever it is. So don't worry too much. Somebody is interested in everything. Anything you could be interested in, you will find others. But it's absolutely stupid to spend your time doing things you don't like in order to go on spending on the things that you don't like and to teach your children to follow in the same track. See, what we're doing is we are bringing up children and educating them to live the same sort of lives that we're living in order that they may justify themselves and find satisfaction in life by bringing up their children to bring up their children to do the same thing. So it's all retch and no vomit. It never gets there. Therefore, it is so important to consider the question, what do I desire? Now that's the first quote. When I was first confronted with this message, there was a part of my heart that perked up and said, that resonates with me. That speaks to the intersection of my heart and my soul in ways that other words and other people's philosophies have not been able to speak to my heart and my soul. I resonate with that message. But there was another part of me, and it was the conditioned way of thinking that found so much anxiety about questions like, forget about the money. What would you do if money were no object? And that little voice in the head, or sometimes big loud voice in the head, was like, but money is an object. It is important. This was the biggest struggle in my entrepreneurial journey. When I was first doing this path that I love, I left my very secure, guaranteed, profitable income as an insurance agent, working in a family-run insurance agency owned by my mom and dad, and I was next in line to take it over. My grandfather had started that agency in 1937. It was very reputable, thousands of clients in the Northern Kentucky, Southwest Ohio, Southeast Indiana region here. It was auto insurance, home insurance, health insurance, business insurance. I mean, we were an independent agency for property, casualty, life, and health insurance with a very proven track record of lots of satisfied customers in our area. And you talk about a guaranteed financial income for myself and my family. Not to mention the fact for very many years, that path in the insurance agency had a heart for me. I actually did enjoy that work until I was introduced to a path and an option in life that spoke to my heart and soul at an even deeper level, where, quite frankly, the financial future and income was not necessarily as certain, or at least predictably certain. Yet, there was no way that my heart would let go of this idea and this desire to go off in a different path than the one that I had previously chosen as my future. When I was confronted with that, I did not have this philosophy, but yet at least I followed my heart enough to know that, yeah, I can't not do this. I was also very blessed to have a wife who was very supportive of that vision. She's the one who even nudged me. She's like, listen, it's very clear that this is what we are meant to do in this world. You're already earning this amount of money. I think that you should finally take the advice of what all these other people are telling you and follow your heart. Go in tomorrow. Put in your notice with your dad and telling you're leaving the family business behind to go pursue this work instead. And that was all I needed, was that confirmation from her, because I was willing to take the risk, but the thing is I had already made a lifelong commitment to be this provider for her. And it seems like, okay, this seems like the most logical path for the greatest predictability of the financial security of our family. And I think that's a big part of what I have promised to give. And I can't be asking myself this question if money is no object. And so I didn't have this philosophy back then. However, I did have the introduction to it. There was another quote I had heard, and I don't know who it's attributed to, but I heard it from my mentor, Dan Miller. He had said to me, he said, Cliff, find something that you love to do so much that you'd be willing to do it all day long for free. And then do that thing and become so great at it that one day you'll master it and people would be willing to pay you to do it. Now, that's a bit of a paraphrase of what was said, but it's the heart of what was said to me by my mentor, Dan Miller. That really started to unlock a lot of conditioned way of thinking about the future of work and the value that I bring, and unlocking some limiting beliefs about, there were quotes that I had heard. People don't get paid to do their hobby. You don't get paid to do that stuff that you love. Those are things you do in your free time. And you need to be responsible and go do a job that the more you hate what you do and the harder it is, the more you should get paid to do it. And some really whacked out belief systems about money and value and earning income that I had to unwire because of the way that I was brought up from culture, society, literature, movies, television show, and certainly school. So yeah, there was a lot that I really struggled for a long time with my decision that I made to leave that secure day job, knowing that my heart said this was the right path, knowing that my wife was on board, but still struggling financially. And quite frankly, the struggle financially in my first year or my first 18 months of business was not necessarily required. Well, it was required with the mindset that I had at the time. It was required based on the belief system that I operated my life by. However, if I could have been introduced earlier to some strategies for evaluating what my beliefs are, where the source of those beliefs came from, questioning whether or not those beliefs are absolutely true. Is there a different alternative, more empowering belief? Is there evidence to support that? How do I eliminate and or disassociate from the old belief and condition a new belief inside of me and begin to experience transformation? And I did. And as a result of that, I found that, wow, it is absolutely certain that with the right transformation of your mindset, you will absolutely earn far greater income, or at least there's a far greater chance of exponentially higher income following a path that you love, because you'll spend more time doing it. What I will tell you is that if I would have stayed in insurance, the only time I would have ever stayed in the office extra hours is in some sort of emergency situation where maybe some employees were out and some things needed to get done or something like that. But boy, would I make sure that things were planned in such a way that I would never have to do that again. And what I hear a lot of people say, and I'm not criticizing anybody's view of what business is and stuff like that, but I definitely see this has been an ongoing trend for the last 20 years that I've recognized. The number of people who say, I just want a business that will generate me X number of amount of income, but where I'm never required to work in it. I remember reading the book E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. I remember reading the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Kiyosaki. And sure, those people have helped thousands and tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of people become financially wealthy and have businesses that can operate without them there. And yet today, with the entrepreneurial coaching that I do today, it's amazing to me how many people have received all the financial wealth that they thought they desired, but they still don't have what their heart wants. And that is a sense of fulfillment, a sense of powerful meaning and purpose, and an excitement to get up and do something that means something worthwhile with their day. Or just the ability to just sit and be. They never took the time to really evaluate what life is truly all about for them. And so much I've seen is a mindset of scarcity of how can I avoid this? How can I avoid this? How can I avoid this? And the answer to most of those questions seems to be more revenue, more income, more wealth alleviates a lot of those things, of the things that I most want to avoid in this world. And what I find is that so many people are not asking themselves, what do I desire? Or where do I desire to go? What do I desire to create? What do I want to move towards? It's so many hours, so many days and weeks and months and years, and yes, decades of people's lives have been spent in the pursuit of avoiding the things they don't want to experience. And that's where all their time, effort, and energy gets focused on, is avoiding what they don't want. And that's why this quote from Alan Watts was so transformational. What do I desire? What do I want to create in this world? I love when he says there at the beginning, he's like, how would you really enjoy spending your life? I'm not saying that we can't have a list of preferences about the things we would like to avoid, but the idea that there's this false dichotomy that says to go do this means I can't actually financially succeed. There are ways for you to create a plan, but you can't have a plan for how to get to the destination you truly desire to get to if you haven't taken the time to really sit down and evaluate, what is it that I desire? For the last 8 years, I've been giving this one assignment to client after client after client. It's called the 50 Things I Want list. And all I do is I instruct them to take a sheet of paper, or you can do a document in a word processor, doesn't matter, At the top, you're going to label this or title it 50 Things I Want. And on the left-hand side, you're going to go all the way down the column and you're going to write 1 through 50. Yeah, and if you're doing it on paper, you'll probably do 1 through 25 on one sheet and then 26 through 50 on the next sheet. And now what you have is you have 50 lines that are blank. And all you have to do, it's as simple as this, although it is not easy for most people. But it is a simple process. All you have to do is ask myself this question: what do I want? And then as soon as an answer comes to your mind, start with line number 1 and type it in. As soon as you finish that, ask this next question: what do I want? And keep going until you have 50 items. Here's the caveat, and I give this assignment to everyone exactly the same way. You cannot allow yourself to run this question through any filters. Matter of fact, you're going to keep this list absolutely confidential if that's important to you. You can decide later if you want to share it or not. However, you must not allow yourself to ask the question, is this possible? If it came to your mind, write it down. Even if its possibility seems no way this will ever happen. But if it came to your mind when you ask the question, what do I want? Write it down. Number 2, don't allow yourself to ask the filtering question of what would someone think if they found this list and saw that I wrote this that I want. Don't ask yourself, is this a good thing? Is this selfish? Is this whatever? Is this materialistic? Leave all of the judgments aside. I promise you, there is a reason why it's important to remove the filters. Now, here's what I can tell you that happens with about 75% of those I've given this assignment to. I check in with them 2 weeks later or 30 days later, and I say, hey, I want to ask you, how did the 50 Things I Want exercise go? Well, Cliff, I got to tell you, I spent probably about 2 or 3 hours total on this, and I'm just absolutely stuck around 20 to 30 some odd items. I cannot finish it. And I said, well, you're not alone in that. It sounds to me like you definitely did set aside the time and that this has been a struggle for you. Let's talk about that. And it's usually a great place for us to begin because as a coach, as a mentor, as an advisor, as a guide, I can't help somebody get somewhere when they don't know where they are trying to get to. See, so many people have already hired me because they're like, Cliff, here's why I want to hire you. I've got all of these problems and I need to find a way to get these problems out of my life. What many people don't understand is that so many of the problems that they have in their life is because they have no clue what it is they truly desire. So they are saying yes to a lot of things that have caused them to be over-obligated and under-committed. They have far too many obligations in their life. In many cases, especially on the entrepreneurial journey, they are doing far too many things for far too many people for far too low of a price that has put them in a financial situation that, quite frankly, it's like, of course you're overwhelmed. And I know that what you think you need right now is a time management system. I know you think you need a CRM. You think you need some organization on how to get it to where you're not missing as many appointments, where you're not overwhelmed and working 14, 18, 22 hours a day. I know that's what you think you need. And I'm happy to work with you on strategies and tools and organization and priorities and mindset things related to that. But none of this is going to solve the root cause of how you got over-obligated and under-committed. The reason why you're under-committed is because you don't truly know what you want. The fact that you can't even answer the question and come up with 50 things that you want is an indicator that you have a lack of clarity about what's important to you in this world. You have a lack of communication with your soul about what it is you desire. And by the way, these things aren't all material things. They can be. There's no judgment. We have been taught, we have been conditioned to not let our heart's desires bubble up into our mind. It's been beaten out of us. Go to any school where you've got kindergartners, first graders, second graders, third graders, all the way up to whatever when they graduate from elementary school. If you go to school, what do you want to be when you grow up? Oh, I could be anything. I want to be a ballet dancer. I want to be a mermaid, one kid said at my daughter's elementary school ceremony where they were being promoted up to middle school. And everybody claps and all this other stuff. It's like, that's so wonderful. But somewhere around middle school and right around high school, everything starts to shift. And it's like, okay, it's time to now really start to focus on making sure that you're understanding good study disciplines. This is how you should study. This is what you should remember. These are the things that are important for you to know so that you can get into a good college. And when you get into college, then you need to choose what your major is. And by the way, here are the accepted courses or paths in life that are the accepted responsible choices for you to chase down in our educational system. These are the ones where if you get this degree and go down this path and have this study, you're most likely to find the best career success, which means sustainable revenue for your lifestyle, so that you can bring up kids to teach them to go through this process, and where you could tell your kids when they're in elementary school that you can be anything you want when you grow up. But then you're going to teach them in high school and through college, and you're going to maybe say, hey, it's time to get really responsible. I'm sorry, I don't think that's a really good job for you. I think if you really want more sustainability financially, I think you should probably consider this path instead. And it just over and over and over again. So this 50 things I want, what I have to do is I have to help people understand, this is so much easier. I'm going to help you get unblocked. I instantly did this for somebody in one of my group coaching calls with the Next Level Coaching program. And somebody said, listen, I got stuck. I've got about 30 some odd items. I'm like, okay, well, I'll tell you what, we're going to take the next 5 minutes and 5 to 10 minutes, and we're going to come up with the remainder of your items. It's going to be super easy. And they're like, okay. And I just began to start asking some questions, and instantly answers started coming out. And it was the way that I asked the questions. You see, that's the thing. Sometimes we get so stuck into the way we ask, what do I desire? And we put all sort of filters on what does that question even mean? And so I started getting creative, and all of a sudden desires that this person hadn't thought of. It's like, oh man, wow, I didn't even know that was inside of me. And so they start to flow. Before you know it, it's like, okay, so now go and do this exercise with this understanding. Reconnecting your ability to dream big dreams is a big key of this. What do I desire? This Alan Watts quote is so amazing. I encourage you to go back and re-listen to me reading that quote again, and it will blow your mind just how much it speaks to your heart. Your soul wants to be freed to be uniquely you. All right? Now, the second quote, I did look, it was episode 688, and it was titled, Does the Path You're On Have a Heart? And I gave a line-by-line commentary on this quote from, the name of the book is The Teachings of Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge by Carlos Castaneda. And this book was published in 1968. There's some controversy on whether or not Castaneda actually did have an apprenticeship with a shaman by the name of Don Juan Matus. Anyway, you can research all that stuff if you want to. I loved this book. This quote is amazing. And I'm going to read it to you, just like I did the Alan Watts quote. I'm going to read this without commentary. All right? And this is what Don Juan had shared with his wisdom and insight to Carlos Castaneda. Anything is one of a million paths. Therefore, you must always keep in mind that a path is only a path. If you feel you should not follow it, you must not stay with it under any conditions. To have such clarity, you must lead a disciplined life. Only then will you know that any path is only a path, and that there is no affront to oneself or to others in dropping it if that is what your heart tells you to do. Your decision to keep on the path or to leave it must be free of fear or ambition. I warn you, look at every path closely and deliberately. Try it as many times as you think necessary. Then ask yourself, and yourself alone, one question. This is the question that only a very wise man asks. Does this path have a heart? All paths are the same. They lead nowhere. Does this path have a heart? If it does, the path is good. If it doesn't, it's of no use. Both paths lead nowhere, but one has a heart, the other doesn't. One makes for a joyful journey. As long as you follow it, you are one with it. The other will make you curse your life. One makes you strong, the other weakens you. But how do you know when a path has no heart? Before you embark on any path, ask the question, does this path have a heart? If the answer is no, you will know it. And then you must choose another path. Carlos Castaneda asked, but how will I know for sure whether a path has a heart or not? Anyone would know that. The trouble is nobody asks the question. And when a man finally realizes that he has taken a path without a heart, the path is ready to kill him. At that point, very few men can stop to deliberate and leave the path. Castaneda asked, how should I proceed to ask this question properly? Don Juan says, just ask it. Castaneda asked, is there a proper method so I would not lie to myself and believe the answer is yes when it is really no? Don Juan asks, why would you lie? Castaneda says, perhaps because at the moment the path is pleasant and enjoyable. And then Don Juan continues, that is nonsense. A path without a heart is never enjoyable. You have to work hard even to take it. On the other hand, a path with a heart is easy. It does not make you work at liking it. And that's the end of the quote. I wanted to introduce you to those two quotes, these philosophies, and see if they resonate with you. If they don't, just ignore this and move on. But if this has resonated with you, I want to share with you what are some of the insights that I've got as it relates to the commentaries I've done in the past and the hundreds of conversations I've had with people who are clearly at a place where the path that they're on is ready to kill them, and they are not able to actually deliberate. They are not even able to ask the question, what do I truly desire? They're not able to get to a list of even 50 things that they truly desire in this world. As a result of that, even if they do know what that is, they struggle to even contemplate the idea of leaving the path that they're on to go on to something different. Anyway, here are the insights. Number one, every path is simply just one of many possible paths. And the path that you're on right now, oftentimes, it's not the wrong path. It's just a path that doesn't have a heart. And by the way, there may have been a time when the path that you're on had a heart, where it did provide energy, where it did not drain you of joy, when you were excited to get up. And things happen along the way. Maybe you were confronted with a different divergent path that showed up that you had no idea was going to be an option for you. Maybe you passed it by and you're starting to ask, what would have happened if I would have done this? And there's no answer to that question that you're going to ever have that's certainty. Did you make a mistake by not taking that opportunity, going down another path? And it's not about making mistakes. It's about evaluating, well, what I can say is I did stay on this path. I didn't choose that path. Here are the results that I'm currently getting. And ask, are these what I desire? No. Okay, then before we work to eliminate all of the stuff that's in your life that you don't desire, what is it that you do desire? Let's get clear about that first and make a strategy or a plan to get you onto a path that has a heart for you. Now, I'm not suggesting that as soon as you do this evaluation, you get very clear about what you want, and it's very clear that the path that you're on is killing you, and killing you, well, quite frankly, it could be causing you a lot of emotional, mental, and even physical ailment. I know it was doing that for me for quite some time. So yeah, it definitely can do that. However, it's not necessarily that you need to immediately break up with your current path. There are some times where the two paths kind of share the same thing. So I live in northern Kentucky, just outside of Cincinnati, Ohio. And there are two interstates, 71 and 75. Right as, like, if I'm crossing the Ohio River from Kentucky into Cincinnati, Ohio, the path to the right takes 71 up towards Columbus, or the path straight goes up to Dayton, Ohio, which is 75. However, if I'm coming from, let's just say 75 or 71, either one, going south from Cincinnati over into Kentucky, into northern Kentucky, Covington, Kentucky, both 71 and 75 merge and it's 71-75. The interstates share the same path. And it does that all the way through Covington. Then it goes through Fort Wright and Fort Mitchell. Then it goes past Erlanger, Kentucky, Florence, Kentucky, Richwood, Kentucky. And finally, you have to make a decision. Okay, you've been on 71 and 75, but if you're going to go further south, you need to decide, am I staying on 75, going south towards Lexington, or do I now want to take the divergent path, 71, towards Louisville, Kentucky? But for a very long period of time, you get the option to be on a path that overlaps. And so for me, I had a heart for a path that led me down a career of podcast coaching and consulting instead of insurance. What I had is a divergent path. And for 18 months, I was on the combined highway, the combined path. But then all of a sudden I saw a mile post, a sign that says, hey, about 3 months ahead, or 3 miles ahead, 3 months ahead, you're going to want to make a decision whether or not you want to stay with insurance or go off and do this thing full time over here and become full-time self-employed. And so in September 2007, I made the decision to turn my turn signal on, get in the right-hand lane and say, hey, I'm going to merge onto 71 away from the combined 71-75 path. I'm going to take this divergent path. However, I was thankful for the fact that these two paths were aligned for a while that allowed me to make my decision and to help me implement some strategies and test some different plans and to evaluate, can I make this thing happen? And what are my risk tolerances? At what cost will it take for me to go off the path? Let's just say I've been on 75 all the way from Michigan, and now all of a sudden I'm not going to just take 75 straight down to Florida. I'm going to divert. I'm going to go instead over here, and I'm ultimately going to get to Florida. But for some reason, I decided I want to go down to Louisville first, and I want to make a stop down into Bowling Green, and I want to stop down into Nashville, and ultimately Florida is my destination. And Florida, that ultimate destination, is the day that I ultimately choose to leave the physical world. I'm ultimately going to get to that destination. We're all going to get there. But what path do we want to be on as we go through? These are the kinds of philosophical questions that many people are just not asking. There's just too much focus, not on what do I desire, but what do I want to eliminate from my life? What do I want to get away from? What I've discovered through my own journey is that a life of true fulfillment is not the elimination of things that I don't want. It is the creation of the things that I desire to have. It is the fulfillment of what my heart is crying out to create in this world. The work that I feel compelled to do, the value that I desire to add to other people's lives, the contribution that I desire to give to others. It is radically a different approach than what most people take. It's a radically different approach to the way that I used to live my life. And I think that you can begin to implement these insights on your own. Just block out 2 or 3 hours over the next week. And if you can't do that, this is an indicator of a significant problem that you are over-obligated and under-committed. But whatever and whenever and wherever you can fit this in, just 3 hours for yourself. Here's what I recommend that you do. Number 1, the 50 Things I Want exercise. I've already given you the description of creating the columns of 1 through 50, asking yourself, what do I want? No filters, no judgment, just write it down. And then once you finish that, then take the list of 50 and then create a separate list called My Top 10 Dreams. And then from that list of 50 things, look at anything on there and say, should this be on my list of my top 10 dreams? And if the answer to that question is yes, throw it into the top 10 list. It's not important that these are in any specific order on your top 10 dreams. These are just the top 10 out of the 50. Then, once you have 10 items that are on your dreams list, I would encourage you to go ahead and write a new list, and it's your top 3 goals. This is the only time where it's important, in my mind, to get clear about what the priority is. So what I would do is I would look at the top 10 dreams that I've now got, and I would ask myself, out of these 10 items, what is most important to me? And I would write that as number 1. And then I would look at the remaining 9 items on my dreams list and say, which of these 9 are most important to me? That's my second priority as far as my goal. And then the third goal that I have, I look at the remaining 8 items on that top 10 dream list and say, what's most important? And now I have my top 3 goals to pursue in life. Now my life can be focused on what I want to create, what I am moving towards my destination rather than just trying to run away from what is undesired. That is the first exercise. That exercise, depending on how much you have the free-flowing ability to allow your heart and soul to speak to you, can take anywhere between an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then the third hour of your self-reflection time is to simply ask yourself this question: does the path that I'm on in life have a heart? And begin to allow yourself to document what comes up when you ask that question. I personally found it very helpful just to start journaling, writing what thoughts and what feelings and what emotions and what pictures and what images came to my mind as I answered the question, does the path that I'm on have a heart? And if the answer to that question is no, then what I would do is I would ask the next question: what other paths could I pursue? And that will be much easier for you to answer if you've gone through the 50 Things I Want exercise, have a list of your top 10 dreams, and then you have your top 3 goals. You gain so much clarity by simply doing these exercises. 3 hours, if invested in this way, could profoundly transform your experience of life between now and your final breath. That statement is not hyperbole. It has profoundly transformed my own life, my own experience, and I have seen it work for hundreds of other people, especially those who are on the entrepreneurial journey. So at the beginning of this episode, I asked the question, have you ever felt as though you have wasted years and maybe even decades going down the wrong path in your entrepreneurial journey? Have you ever lacked clarity about what you want to create next in this world? These are things that I have been helping those who are on the entrepreneurial journey do for the last 2 decades of my life. It started out with podcast coaching and consulting, and I didn't even realize it in the early days, but that's exactly what I was doing. People said, Cliff, I want to launch a podcast. And when I got them into my podcasting A to Z course, or I was working with them through one-on-one coaching in the earliest days, I always asked the question, what is it that you desire to create with your podcast? And the number of people who had no idea, I don't know, I just want to create a podcast. Why do you want to create a podcast? What does success look like for you? How will you know, let's just say 3 to 5 years down the road from now, and I were to say, how's things going with your podcasting? And you said, oh my gosh, it is so amazing. This has been the best thing that I ever decided to do, was to launch this podcast. And if I were to then ask you, well, tell me, what has been going on with your podcast that makes you feel that way? What would you tell me? And ever since I started teaching people how to podcast, I was asking people to get clear about what it is they desire to create. The people would say to me, Cliff, I just desire to have a podcast. No, let's get underneath. Why do you desire to have a podcast? What is your heart and your soul trying to communicate to you? What is it that's not a part of your life without a podcast that would be a part of your life if you had a podcast? I promise you there's a deeper reason why you feel so compelled to create content for other people to hear. Today, I have decided that while this is the deeper work that I'm doing with other human beings, and quite frankly, there's a lot of people who simply don't have a desire to have a podcast, but they have a desire to start a business. They have a desire to create a side hustle, and whether a podcast is a part of it, this is the deeper work that I've been doing. And that's why back in November 2017, I stopped teaching people how to podcast. And I began helping people with their mindset and then developing strategies for creating plans on how to create what it is they want to create most in this world. And by the way, I want to let you know real quickly here at the end, there are a couple of ways that I do this. One is through my Next Level Mastermind. The Next Level Mastermind is for those who are on an entrepreneurial journey. You're already full-time self-employed, and you want to be elevated in your peer group. You want to be able to do life with people who understand the kind of weight that is associated with the decisions that you make. Whether or not you put food on the table, whether or not you have money at the end of the month to pay yourself a paycheck or pay your payroll to your staff or your team or your employees, whatever you call them in your business, these decisions that you're making, do you have a sounding board of other people who understand the weight of those decisions? Are you consistently surrounded by people who are devoted to making things happen? Are you surrounded by people who are consistently devoted and committed to unceasing personal and professional growth? Are you surrounded by people who are taking courses and reading books and who are investing in learning new skills and techniques and strategies? And are you the type of person who's willing to share what you've learned with everyone else in this group? as a result of them also being willing to take everything they've ever learned, everything they've ever experienced, and being willing to share that with you freely every single week for 90 minutes. That is the Next Level Mastermind. If you're interested in that, definitely want to encourage you to head over to nextlevelmastermind.info, not .com. That's somebody else's mastermind group. Mine is over at nextlevelmastermind.info. Or you can email me, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, put Next Level Mastermind in the subject line, say, Cliff, tell me more. The second thing that I do is the Next Level Coaching Program. The Next Level Coaching Program is a weekly group coaching program where I answer the questions that you have as it relates to where you're getting stuck in your entrepreneurial pursuit. This is for anybody who is an aspiring or early stage entrepreneur. If you're not making at least a minimum of $10,000 a month every single month in your business, the Next Level Coaching Program is able to help you get the answers you need to get you unstuck, to get the creative juices flowing, and to help you create strategies and plans for getting to that level of success as an entrepreneur that brings the consistency of income that you so desperately desire. That is the Next Level Coaching Program. If you are interested in that, I want you to email me. My email address again, cliff@cliffravenscraft.com, and put group coaching program in the subject line. And until next time, I encourage you to take everything you do to the next level.
Mindset Answer Man.